Careful everyone, this is going to get loud. Finally, my colleague from GameStar got to put his hands on the super shotgun and play the new Doom: The Dark Ages for 4 hours. One thing is clear, this new Doom feels completely unfamiliar. Let me share his impression about what's new, what is familiar, what works, and what not. Let's begin. Right from the very first steps you take, it's clear. The death-defying aerial acrobatics from Doom Eternal are now a thing of the past. Instead, game director Hugo Martin describes the new gameplay approach like this. In Eternal, we were a fighter jet. In the Dark Ages, we are a battle tank, and instead of constantly jumping around, we stand firmly on the ground. Melee combat is now a permanent part of the Doom Slayer's arsenal and no longer just a gimmick. But don't worry, the gunplay is not replaced by this in any way. In the Dark Ages, pure speed is no longer the main factor. Instead, timing and tactics become more important. Depending on the challenge, we have to choose which weapon, maneuver, or attack needs to be used to best handle the current situation. The focal point of the combat system is the Slayer's new shield. And no, obviously it's not a normal shield, it's a Doom game, so it's a chainsaw shield, or simply saw shield. We always hold it in our left hand while keeping the weapon of our choice in the right, and the shield itself grants us 4 moves. If you hold the right button, the shield blocks frontal attacks up to a certain amount of damage. If you block at the right moment, you parry certain attacks, deflect projectiles, and possibly stagger your enemy. While blocking, you can target enemies and smash into them with full force that obviously deals damage, but you also move across the battlefield super fast. And finally, if you press R, you can throw that damn chainsaw shield like Captain America, either smashing the enemy's armor or stunning them just as the saw on the shield's edge digs deep into demons' bodies. So, as you can expect from a Doom game, shield is not just a purely defensive tool. Instead, it is the new all-rounder in the Slayer's arsenal, and it's absolutely crucial in almost every single fight. If you have an arachnotron shooting at you from a distance with its cannon, the best thing to do is to block its shots and then dash towards it to force it into close combat, which is going to hurt it a lot because this brings us to our next part on the menu. The flail. Unlike in the previous games in the series, melee combat is no longer limited to glory kills. Slayer can now freely use melee weapons, like the flail, in irregular combat and even execute combos. You can chain up to 3 strikes together before you need to collect new charges or wait for the cooldown to finish. And the flail is one of several melee options that Slayer acquires throughout the campaign in the newest Doom. In combination with the shield abilities, you can even turn small groups of enemies into hellish mincemeat without firing a single shot. One thing important to note here is that these melee attacks also replace glory kills in a way. Instead of having fixed animations that briefly put you out of combat, the flail finishers seamlessly integrate into the flow of the game, which I gotta say feels pretty damn cool. Especially when you can basically catapult a demonic rider off his horned beast with a very metallic from the flail, then finish off the beast with a double-barreled shotgun blast. As a result, you get the usual rain of ammo and armor, and it does give you this feeling of being the biggest badass in the area. So, in the new Doom game, we don't just rush forward blindly and hammer the melee button, because the enemies have adapted to the Slayer's new skills, and now we gotta keep making tactical decisions as we go. The zombie soldiers now appear more and more often with their own shields and set themselves in a formation. As a result, regular firearms may not be enough to push through. Luckily, after a few hits, the shield starts to glow, and that's the signal to, once again, become the hardcore version of Steve Rogers and throw that saw shield towards the enemies. And now, the whole group is done. One variant of the imps is completely immune to shield throws because of their stone skin, so here it's back to basics with pure firepower. This, however, does nothing against thick shells of the new demonic battle tanks. Luckily, like I said before, you can deflect the projectiles back at your enemies with proper timing, and as a result, your enemy is done with one precise hit. An interesting bit of novelty here is that certain mini-bosses have, in addition to their own armor, a second line of defense, and that's morale. Such a demon can only be killed once we bring its morale bar down to 0 by defeating enough smaller minions around it. And that's obviously not going to be easy because the mini-boss will keep shooting at us while we deal with his bodyguards. So, as you can probably already tell, in Doom the Dark Ages, even in the heat of battle, you gotta use your brain. All the new tools need to be combined well, and you need to read your opponents correctly to know how to approach them. Otherwise, your campaign fun will quickly end on the loading screen. Through all of these elements that I just mentioned, New Doom opens a completely new combat dynamic. However, this game doesn't lose sight of what made this series what it is today. Even gunplay, which has been the core of the Doom series since 1993, feels better than ever. The new weapons are all super creative. With the nail gun called the Impaler, you can, guess what, impale enemies to the walls of the levels. The Reaver chain shot blasts a thick cannonball at your enemies before retracting it back to a weapon, and the Pulverizer, well, it crushes the skulls of your enemies and then shoots the bone shards at the demons, so that makes sense. And all of this against a medieval background that might as well come from the album cover of a death metal band. Oh, and the crown jewel of it all is the bass-heavy sound of your arsenal, the heavy stomping steps of the Slayer, and the really juicy hit feedback when demons lose a limb or two. A Doom game. Now, due to its more grounded gameplay, strafing plays a larger role again, just like in the first Doom. So, if you found Eternal a bit too much like a flight simulator, you will definitely welcome the return to slower and more strategic movements. When it comes to level design, there's a mix of classic and more modern elements that await us here. While many passages are largely linear, the locations in the Dark Ages regularly open up into mini open worlds, somewhat comparable to Metro Exodus. For example, in the demo we played during the event, we experienced a siege and we were able to explore a forest, a small settlement, scattered dungeons, and a swamp.
What are you doing in my swamp?
You don't have to worry though, this is not an open world comparable to, for example, GTA. We still play one level after another, although I have to say that the Dark Ages offers the unusual amount of freedom for a Doom game. Sure, you can certainly follow the main quest marker to just go and do your thing, but then you'll miss optional bosses, hidden dungeons, and secret treasure chests with gold and upgrade points. These become especially important at higher difficulty levels, as you need to use the resources to unlock new abilities for the weapons, your shield, and the flail. So all of these things, the melee combat, the shield, and your weapons, they all form a single unit. Switching between them should feel smooth and natural. The shield exploits your enemy's weaknesses, the flail provides additional resources on the battlefield, and with your weapons, well, you deal most of the damage. And through the skill tree, you add some depth to the whole thing. All of the fighting is then broken up a little bit with small puzzle sections. The jumping sectors from Eternal, which many fans found annoying, seem to be a thing of the past, or at least I didn't get to see any trace of them in the demo I played. What was particularly impressive during the whole experience were the varied and atmospheric environments with which its software creates a fantastic immersive feeling. While you take down hordes of monsters, you can see towering titans clash in the distance, and siege cannons make the ground shake everywhere. This creates a true atmosphere of a battlefield and less of hopping between arenas. The small scripted sequences also fit seamlessly into all of that. Things like manning a fortified machine gun and mowing down waves of landing demons. That's damn satisfying. Oh, and now instead of the mundane codex entries, we get to experience the story in stylish cutscenes with proper dialogues. Although, don't worry, codex is not gone. This approach makes characters and factions much more tangible and interesting. And if you're wondering, when it comes to the story, no prior knowledge is really necessary. After all, we are playing a prequel to Doom from 2016 and Doom Eternal. And while I won't go into detail, because spoilers, this time around we get to finally learn why the Slayer allowed himself to be used as a super weapon for the Argenta back in the day. Now, with so much focus on telling the story, the complete absence of any multiplayer modes makes sense. Multiplayer was hardly ever anything more than quite okay, and now the Dark Ages is supposed to have the most extensive Doom campaign to this day, with the largest sandbox levels and a full-fledged story, and the largest enemy hordes ever. At least that's what Hugo Martin and id Software promise. Unfortunately, not everything is all fun and games in hell. What made me pretty sad is that two of the most epic scenes from the trailer are actually quite boring. Namely, the vehicle segments when you get to control the giant mech called the Atlan or fly on the back of a cyber dragon. These sections do look damn cool, and for many fans, the dream of finally being able to control the big mechs that you could only previously see and not use, it is coming true. At first, sure, it was incredibly cool to be able to crash mancubi like an ant at your feet, but these combat sequences are limited to mindless parrying, hitting, shooting, then parrying, hitting, shooting, and then parrying. You know the drill. And even with the Cyber Dragon, you fly through checkpoints quite clumsily, and while you're in turret mode, you lose all mobility to just be able to shoot at static turrets and dodge left and right. As a result, these grand staged scenes feel more like a gimmick rather than an expanded game mechanic. Unfortunately, it cannot at all compete with the carefully crafted on-foot gameplay. I guess id Software was just looking for a way to loosen up the gameplay a bit, break the regular pace with something different. However, I think the studio must either ensure more variety within these vehicles or just limit the frequency of these segments. One thing I forgot to mention before are the extensive menus where you get to control the speed of the game, color saturation, individual HUD elements, and much more. And that is something that brought the game a lot of crap when it was first revealed. The good thing about the extensive ways of adapting how the game plays and looks is that if you prefer to have a particularly immersive experience while playing the game, you can get that by getting rid of the blinking icons or glowing enemies, and that is pretty neat. Okay, so after 4 hours of shooting, hitting things, and shielding things, I gotta say it was an incredibly fun time. Combat in Doom: The Dark Ages feels like a puzzle to be solved. In the first few minutes, it definitely required some patience, and you had to have it in you to be willing to engage with the new mechanics that are absolutely necessary to play the game. But as soon as it clicks, you start getting into this phenomenal flow and you feel like an unstoppable fighting machine that the Doomslayer actually is. And then the battle rhythm of Doom: The Dark Ages with its shotgun, flail, and the saw shield becomes a true heavy metal symphony unmatched by anything else, also with its deep upgrade system. If you're interested in the game, Doom: The Dark Ages will be released on May 15th, although if you're willing to pay for a premium edition, you'll get to play 2 days earlier. Thank you for taking the time to watch our impressions. Most of the gameplay I'm showing from one of the maps is our own gameplay, with some of the b-roll provided by Bethesda, for example in the sections with the Atlan and the Dragon. Let us know what you think about the game in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Take care.